My name is Tom Cvetkovich, and I'm from Youngstown, Ohio. I'd like to present two local stories and a few comments on the larger picture. My 94-year-old uncle lived in Liberty Township, right off of Belmont Avenue, where there was a truck cleaning station. It's still there. And the first thing it's a dead-end street. It's right off of busy Belmont Avenue. Liberty is the township just north of Youngstown. And the trucking company, Iron Eagle, originally told Liberty Township that it was going to be a parking lot and cleaning station. And the first thing they did was take the natural soil and put in 18 to 20 inches of gravel. They started bringing in big tanker trucks. They were asked what they were doing with big tanker trucks. It was the middle of winter, a very, very cold winter. Minus 10, minus 15 degrees, they said, this is water from cleaning bridges. After a while, it became clear that it wasn't. My uncle lives adjacent to that lot. In the middle of the winter, they would pull up huge pumping trucks, giant motors, right behind his bedroom. It created a resonance in the house. The house just shook. I mean, it was just this thumping sound. They would do this later in the evening, around 11 o'clock at night. He called the police came, they stopped. A few days later, he called the police came, and the stopped. It happened a third time. As a matter of fact, the first time they came, they fined them $100 for disturbing the peace. After a while, the sounds would stop and then continue again. It became clear that either they had somebody in the police department telling them that the police were coming, or they were monitoring the police radio. They would simply go into the temporary dwellings, wait a while, and come back and do their work, maybe with or without the sounds, maybe later. Eventually, one of the trustees of Liberty asked them to at least move their heavy-duty equipment so it wouldn't be right up against his house. It was still very, very disturbing for a 94-year-old man and pretty much wrecked the last winter of his life. What's more disturbing is that it became clear that these were fracking trucks by the notation on the side of the trucks. The trucks would be hooked up to a Youngstown fire hydrant, which they had free access to, an unmonitored fire hydrant. The water goes into the pumping trucks, it gets pressurized, then they use that high pressure to clean out the trucks. Some members of the Liberty City Council were sympathetic to trying to keep the water clean, to having this water go into Youngstown City water. Other members had already sold their mineral rights and did not feel like they could say anything. My uncle is very forceful, shall we say, 94-year-old Eastern European. He eventually got the mayor to come out to his house, who said, oh, you can't do anything. This is just progress. One of the other city council people did stand up for him and try to do things, and in fact called the EPA on more than one occasion. But the fact is that in this country, you are allowed to dilute and pollute. And that is what we are doing. And that is what they would do. They would simply use fresh city water cleaned with our tax dollars until it became lower than the acceptable limits and throw it into the city pools, into the city water system, the sewer system. I would want to bring to attention the court William McDonough, who wrote the book Cradle to Cradle, which provides a solution to our problem wherein every object has within it the possibility of being 100% recycled, and every object has all of its chemical components known. So the cradle-to-cradle movement is growing, and it will eventually keep the biosphere separate from the man-made sphere. He points out in his book that being less bad is not good enough, and that what we're doing is akin to boiling a lobster very slowly. Our rules and ecological mandates as given by the government are allowing us to just pollute ourselves at a slightly lower rate. The second local story is my own. We live about 3 miles from the injection well owned by Mr. Lupo, which caused the 12 earthquakes When the 4.0 earthquake occurred, my daughter ran downstairs and said, "Did a truck hit our house?" You heard something similar. To me, it sounded like a big giant just thumping its fists on the ground directly next to the house, one very large bang. The wood pile behind my house has fallen 3 times during that year. During the worst of it, the wood, which was neatly stacked vertically, was staggered. Each row of wood was offset about 2 inches until it fell over. So that wood had to be lifted at least a fraction of an inch and offset for that to happen. The house is on a slight incline. I am now looking at a $20,000 bill to have the crack, which I can see through in my basement, followed down to the bedding of the house. The people who were over and who inspected the house found 6 or 7 more cracks in the foundation of my house. So sometimes next year they'll dig up the entire foundation. We'll look at all that, and all of that work will have to be done. On a larger point of view, when I think about these problems, I think about the scientific evidence that we are approaching the 6th mass extinction of the planet. Species on the planet are disappearing at a rate 10 times faster than the natural extinction of the species. On average, a species on this planet can survive for about 10 million years before it disappears as the species which we recognize it. At a rate 10 times faster than that, human activity is now accelerating that. And I would like to bring to the court's attention the notion of a robbing frenzy, a book by the man Joseph Jenkins, who is the author of Humanure Handbook, which is one of the solutions also, which gives guidelines